The warning. The vast council chamber of the Kelveri Dominion hummed with anticipation as Admiral Vorex strode confidently toward the central podium. His scaled skin glimmered under the bioluminescent lights, 6 eyes blinking in sequence as he surveyed the gathered representatives of the most powerful spacefaring civilization in the Orion Arm. Behind him, a massive holographic display activated, revealing a small blue-green planet suspended in the blackness of space. "Esteemed Council," Vorex began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber, "our exploration fleet has discovered a resource-rich world in Sector 783, orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Initial scans indicate abundant water, minerals, and a native species that has achieved basic spaceflight but remains confined primarily to their homeworld." The Kelveri High Chancellor leaned forward, her elongated fingers forming a steeple. "Tell us of these natives, Admiral. Are they a threat to our expansion?" Vorex flicked his tail dismissively. "Hardly, Chancellor. They call themselves humans, and while they've managed to establish a few primitive colonies on their neighboring planets, their technology is centuries behind ours. Their weapons are kinetic and nuclear-based, with rudimentary energy shields. Our conquest would be swift and absolute." Murmurs of approval rippled through the council. The Kelveri Dominion had subjugated 17 species in the last century alone, each assimilated into their ever-growing empire as worker castes. Resources were becoming scarce in their controlled systems, and expansion was necessary for the continued prosperity of their civilization. "I propose," Vorex continued, "a standard 3-phase conquest. First, we neutralize their orbital defenses and communications. Second, we establish control of their major population centers. Third, we process the survivors for labor assignment. With your approval, I can have the invasion fleet ready within 1 lunar cycle." Before the Chancellor could respond, a soft voice echoed from the shadows at the edge of the chamber. "I would counsel caution, Admiral." The assembly turned as one to observe the speaker. Unlike the reptilian Kelveri, this being was tall and slender, with pale translucent skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Ambassador Xandar of the Illuminari Collective, one of the few species that maintained independence through a non-aggression pact with the Dominion. "Ambassador," Vorex said, unable to completely mask his irritation, "this is a military matter. Your presence is appreciated but unnecessary." Xandar moved forward, each step deliberate and graceful. "My people have existed for over 10,000 of your years, Admiral. We have observed many species rise and fall. These humans you speak of with such dismissal, we have encountered them before." A hush fell over the chamber. The Illuminari were known to be ancient, but they rarely shared their knowledge of galactic history. "They appeared primitive to us as well," Xandar continued, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the light in hypnotic patterns. 2 centuries ago, when their civilization was even younger, a Cathori battle group, distant cousins to your people, attempted to establish a mining colony on their world. The Chancellor's interest was piqued. "I know nothing of these Cathori. What became of them?" Xandar's expression remained impassive, but something like sorrow flickered across his features. "They no longer exist as a spacefaring civilization. The humans annihilated them." Admiral Vorex scoffed loudly. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicates humans have only mastered faster-than-light travel within the last 70 years. How could they destroy an advanced species?" "Because," Xandar said softly, "humans do not fight like other species. When threatened, they do not calculate acceptable losses or strategic retreats. They fight with absolute commitment to victory, regardless of cost. The Cathori took one of their cities. In response, the humans did not surrender. They developed countermeasures at an impossible pace, reverse-engineered Cathori technology from crashed ships, and launched what they called a total war." Vorex's scorn was evident. "All species fight for survival." "No," Xandar replied. "Most species fight until fighting becomes too costly. Humans fight until their enemy is completely neutralized, regardless of their own casualties. They deployed nuclear weapons on their own territory to destroy Cathori footholds. They sacrificed millions of their own to develop biological agents that targeted Cathori physiology. And when they had driven the invaders from their world, they did not stop. The holographic display shifted, showing fragments of ancient records, burning cities, devastated landscapes, and finally, the shattered remains of enormous ships drifting in space. They salvaged enough technology to follow the Cathori home, Xandar continued. Within 10 years, they had not only repelled the invasion, but had systematically dismantled every Cathori colony, outpost, and finally, their homeworld. Not for resources or territory, purely to ensure the Cathori could never threaten them again. The council chamber remained silent, the implications settling over the assembly like a shroud. Preposterous, Vorax finally declared. No primitive species could accomplish such a feat. Xandar regarded him with ancient eyes. That is precisely what makes humans dangerous, Admiral. You see their current technological state and assume limitations. Humans do not recognize limitations when fighting for survival. They innovate at a rate that defies conventional development curves. Give them a problem and sufficient motivation, and they will solve it through methods you would never consider. The Chancellor's expression had grown troubled. You advise against the invasion. I do more than advise, Xandar said. I warn you with the fullest urgency. Attack the humans, and they will never stop until the Kelveri Dominion exists only in historical archives. They are not like us. They do not understand the concept of limited warfare. If you become their enemy, they will pursue you across the stars for 1,000 years if necessary. Admiral Vorax's pride would not allow him to accept such counsel. With respect, Chancellor, the ambassador speaks of ancient history and a different human civilization. Our technological superiority is absolute. We can obliterate their defenses before they even realize they're under attack. The Chancellor hesitated, looking between the confident Admiral and the solemn ambassador. Finally, she nodded. Proceed with the invasion preparations, Admiral, but double our standard force allocation. I will not underestimate any species, regardless of their apparent development level. As the council dispersed, Xandar approached Vorax privately. Admiral, I make one final plea. I have watched civilizations more advanced than yours crumble against human determination. Do not do this thing. Vorax's scales rippled with contained anger. I do not need counsel from a species that hides behind diplomacy, rather than expanding through strength. The Dominion will have this world, and its inhabitants will serve like all others before them. Xandar's eyes dimmed. Then remember my words when the time comes. Attack them, and you will never escape alive. 3 cycles later, the Kelveri invasion fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 500 warships, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent, arranged themselves in battle formation. Admiral Vorax stood on the command deck of the dreadnought Inevitable Conquest, surveying the tactical displays with satisfaction. Commence communications blackout, he ordered. Target their orbital defenses and satellite networks first. I want their planet blind and deaf before they realize we're here. The first volley of energy weapons lanced across space, striking Earth's primitive defense satellites and military stations. Explosions bloomed in silence against the blackness, debris scattering like cosmic dust. Excellent, Vorax said, watching the destruction unfold. Phase 1 is proceeding as... Admiral, his sensor officer interrupted, voice tight with confusion. We're detecting unusual energy signatures from the dark side of their moon. Vorax frowned. Explain. Unknown technology, sir. Not matching any known human capabilities from our intelligence reports. They appear to be. The officer stopped abruptly, eyes widening. Multiple launches detected. Hundreds of them. The tactical display suddenly illuminated with swarms of small craft erupting from concealed bases on the lunar surface, bases that had been completely invisible to Kelveri scans. Impossible, Vorex whispered as the human vessels accelerated toward his fleet at velocities that should have been beyond their technological capacity. Then the transmission came through on all Kelveri frequencies simultaneously, bypassing their communication security, as if it didn't exist. A human voice, calm and resolute, addressed them in perfect Kelveri language. Kelveri aggressors, this is Admiral Helena Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We've been watching you prepare for this invasion for months. The Elinari warned us you were coming. This is your only opportunity to retreat. Any further hostile action will be considered a declaration of total war against humanity. Vorex snarled, his pride overwhelming his sudden unease. Open fire on all human vessels. Launch all fighters. The space between the fleets lit up with energy weapons and missile contrails. But as the battle was joined, Vorex watched in growing horror as the human ships demonstrated impossible maneuverability, weapons technologies that couldn't exist according to their intelligence, and worst of all, a complete disregard for conventional battle tactics. They sacrificed ships willingly to deliver devastating blows to the Kelveri fleet. 4 hours later, Admiral Vorex stared in disbelief at the tactical display. Half his fleet was destroyed or disabled. Somehow, the humans had adapted their weapons mid-battle to penetrate Kelveri shields. Somehow, they had known exactly where to strike to cause catastrophic damage. Retreat, he finally ordered, his voice hollow. Full withdrawal from this system. As the remaining Kelveri ships limped into hyperspace, Vorex received one final transmission from Admiral Chen. This was your warning shot, Admiral. We could have destroyed your entire fleet. Instead, we're letting you return to deliver a message. Never return to Earth space. Because if you do, we will follow you home. And unlike you, when we start a war, we finish it completely. As the stars streaked past in hyperspace, Vorex remembered Sandar's warning with a chill of primal fear. What had they awakened? The reckoning. The imperial throne room of the Kelveri Dominion had never felt so cold. High Chancellor Xivrix, successor to the previous Chancellor, who had been executed for the Earth debacle, stared down at Admiral Vorex, with all 6 eyes narrowed in contempt. 3 standard years had passed since the failed invasion, and everything had changed. Explain to me, Admiral, Xivrix said, voice dangerously soft, how a species confined to a single star system has managed to destroy 17 of our core worlds in less than 3 years. Vorex, once proud and decorated, now stood with his scales dulled and posture submissive. Chancellor, we gravely underestimated human adaptability. After our retreat, they recovered intact technology from our damaged vessels. Somehow, they not only reverse-engineered our systems but improved upon them. They weaponized our own technology against us. The massive view screen behind the Chancellor displayed the latest devastation. The Kelveri colony world of Narshul engulfed in flames, orbital facilities shattered, and a haunting message broadcast on repeat across all frequencies. For Earth, our intelligence indicated it would take them decades to understand our hyperspace technology. Vorex continued, his voice hollow. They had functional drives within 6 months. Our estimates suggested their biological limitations would prevent them from sustaining the neural load of our targeting systems. They developed neural interfaces that exceeded our capabilities within a year. Chancellor Xivrix rose from her throne, tail lashing in barely contained fury. And now they have broken through our final defensive perimeter. Their fleet approaches the homeworld as we speak, all because you could not heed a simple warning. We have deployed our entire remaining fleet, Vorex said desperately. 30,000 ships, our most advanced weapons, our best commanders. They cannot penetrate such defenses. A tremor suddenly shook the throne room, dust falling from the ancient ceiling. Then another, stronger. Warning alarms blared throughout the palace complex. Chancellor, a communications officer burst into the chamber, forgetting all protocol in his panic. They're here. Human ships have appeared in low orbit. Impossible. Xivrix hissed. Our sensor net would have detected their approach. the fleet would have engaged them. They didn't come through normal space. The officer gasped. Their ships, they appeared inside our defense grid. Hundreds of them, materializing directly in orbit. Our scientists say they must have developed some form of targeted hyperspace jump technology. They're bypassing our entire defense network. On the view screen, the feed switched to orbital cameras. Sleek black vessels of human design hung above the Kelveri capital city, their weapons already deploying. But they weren't firing indiscriminately. Instead, precision strikes were eliminating military installations with surgical accuracy. They're targeting only military assets, the officer said incredulously. Civilian areas are being avoided. A new transmission cut through all Kelveri communications, and a human face appeared on the throne room display. A female with dark hair streaked with silver, her expression neither triumphant nor vengeful, but grimly determined. Kelveri leadership. This is Fleet Admiral Helena Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. Your outer colonies have been neutralized. Your fleets have been disabled. We now control orbital supremacy over your homeworld. We could end your civilization right now, as you intended to end ours. She paused, allowing the implications to sink in. But unlike you, we do not seek the extermination of species. We offer terms: immediate dissolution of the Kelveri Dominion, release of all subjugated species, complete disarmament of your military forces, acceptance of human oversight for a period of 50 years. These terms are non-negotiable. Chancellor Xivrix snarled, her pride still intact despite their desperate situation. And if we refuse? Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. Then we will do what we must to ensure humanity is never threatened by the Kelveri again. You have 1 hour to decide. As the transmission ended, the doors to the throne room opened once more. Ambassador Xandar of the Illuminari entered, his luminescent form seeming to absorb the darkness of the moment. You, Vorex spat. You warned the humans of our coming. You betrayed us to them. Xandar regarded him with ancient eyes. I warned you first, Admiral. I told you what would happen if you attacked them. When your pride rejected wisdom, I did what was necessary to prevent the extinction of your species. What do you mean? Chancellor Xivrix demanded. Had the humans not been prepared for your attack, had you succeeded in establishing a foothold on Earth, do you know what would have happened? Xandar asked quietly. They would have responded with every weapon at their disposal. They would have developed technologies born of desperation and fury. And when they finally defeated you, which they would not have offered terms. They would have ensured the Kelveri could never threaten anyone again. Xandar moved to the center of the room, his form casting strange shadows. I have watched humanity for centuries. They are unique among spacefaring races. When treated with respect, they are the most collaborative, innovative, and compassionate species I have encountered. But when threatened with extinction, they become something else entirely, something implacable and unstoppable. You claim to have saved us, Vorex said bitterly. Yes, Xandar replied simply. By warning them, I allowed them to respond with measured force rather than existential panic. The terms they offer are harsh, but your species will survive. Chancellor Xivrix slumped back onto her throne, the weight of decision heavy upon her. How did they advance so quickly? No species develops that fast. That is what I tried to explain, Xandar said. Humans do not innovate linearly. Under sufficient pressure, they make conceptual leaps that other species require generations to achieve. What they lack in natural lifespan, they compensate for with adaptability and determination. The neural interface technology that your scientists have been working on for 50 years, human engineers solved it in months because they had to. Outside, the human ships maintained their perfect formation, weapons ready but holding fire. The countdown to their deadline continued inexorably. My species first encountered humans 800 years ago, Xandar revealed. We approached peacefully and were met with curiosity and friendship. We have exchanged knowledge as equals ever since. The Cathori approached with aggression and were eradicated. The pattern has repeated itself throughout human history. Those who seek cooperation find in humans their greatest allies. Those who seek dominance find their most implacable enemy. Chancellor Xivrix looked up, suddenly understanding. This is why the Elinari have remained independent despite being less warlike than the Dominion. You have human protection. Xandar smiled slightly. We have human friendship, Chancellor. There is a difference. In the final minutes before the human deadline, the Kelveri leadership made their decision. Survival, even under human terms, was preferable to extinction. The surrender was broadcast across all Kelveri territories. 1 week later, Admiral Vorex found himself boarding a human diplomatic vessel, part of the delegation assigned to formalize the peace treaty. To his surprise, Admiral Chen herself met him at the airlock. "Admiral Vorex," she said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome aboard the Olive Branch." Reluctantly, he took her hand. "I do not understand you, human. You could have destroyed us completely. Why didn't you?" Chen studied him for a moment. "Because that's the fundamental thing you misunderstood about us. Humanity doesn't desire conquest or extinction of others. We simply refuse to allow either to happen to us." As they walked through the corridor toward the conference room, Vorex noticed something on the wall, a framed artifact that appeared to be an ancient human military flag. Beneath it, words were inscribed in both human and Kelveri script. "Si vis pacem, parabellum." Seeing his interest, Chen stopped. An ancient human saying. It means, if you desire peace, prepare for war. We don't want to fight, Admiral, but we will never stop fighting if we must. That's the paradox your people fail to grasp. Vorex looked at this human who had brought the mighty Kelveri Dominion to its knees and finally understood what Xandar had tried to tell him years ago. Humans weren't dangerous because of their technology or their numbers or their physical strength. They were dangerous because when threatened, they recognized no limits, accepted no defeat, and never, ever stopped until they were safe. "I believe," Vorex said slowly, "we have much to learn from humans." Admiral Chen smiled, and for the first time, Vorex saw not the implacable enemy who had destroyed half the Dominion, but a person who had simply been protecting her home. "That," she said, "is where peace begins." In the decades that followed, the galaxy witnessed something no one had predicted. The former Kelveri Dominion, now the Kelveri Republic, becoming one of humanity's strongest allies. The species that had once sought to conquer Earth now worked alongside humans to establish a new galactic order based on cooperation rather than subjugation. And throughout the stars, a new wisdom spread among spacefaring civilizations. Approach humans with friendship, and find invaluable allies. Approach with hostility, and find an enemy that will never let you escape alive. The universe, it seemed, was finally learning what Xandar had known all along. The most dangerous species in the galaxy was also, potentially, its greatest hope.